So it being 3 o'clock, we're going to call the meeting to order of the Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee meeting. We will start out with informational items, and we will start out with the monthly financial report.
Happy New Year, or as finance would say, Happy New Fiscal Year, everybody. I've been waiting all along to say that. I have my water bottle. I hope I don't start coughing uncontrollably, if so, I apologize ahead of time. So in the financial report, we have September for you. I'm just going to go and highlight a couple of really high-level viewpoints. Yesterday, in one of the meetings, I believe it was Miss Betty Duncan asked about the property taxes and the collection rate. So I ran a couple of numbers today, so I wanted to bring this for you. So the property taxes for 22 payable 23, we had a requested levy of 29.1 million, which was an estimated 4% increase in EAV. The AAV actually we realized a 4.9% increase, which had a total property tax levy, we call it extended levy, at 29.4 million. So of that, we have collected to date 29.1, which is 99.2% of the total extension. Now, what also comes in as revenue is we recognize $105,000 in interest specifically for property taxes, which is deposited into that line item. And then what is not booked yet that will come in period 13 is the penalties, which we budget about $750,000. So last couple years we're a little higher than that, but I would say 750 is still a pretty good number. So just want to add that for added value now that we're all the way through December, even though this is just for September. For intergovernmental revenues, just a reminder, we have the ARPA in there, but year to date we've only spent about 2.8 million in expenditures, so we can only recognize that. And ARPA has collected about 1.4 million in interest, so that should benefit that fund. We usually end our financials with a discussion on policy reserve limits. It's music to my ears when we add narrative and people comment on it, so thank you very much. For those who read that in depth, you'll see we added a whole nother page of information which discusses the action taken by the county board in December to address the Strategic Initiative 18 to prepare the future county board to have sufficient funds to hopefully pay off in full the bonds for heading to Oaks when they come callable. So that will stay in our monthly financial, and it will start to show up in other publications that we do. So we kind of, it will become old news, but it will be publicized. So we won't lose track of that. Next, now that we are in a new fiscal year, budget planning is almost behind us. We will be issuing the adopted budget come hopefully next week or the week after. In the budget book, we submit this to GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association. And so we have to add some additional criteria to that budget to meet their standards. Our hope is in FY25, especially with the new software and pattern stream, it will give staff the opportunity to publicize that also in the county administrator's recommended budget to have more continuity between the two documents. So that should be a value add with this new ERP system. So looking forward to that. And I did have in here a couple of the differences is there's an introduction section which highlights the county as a whole, so the history, economical data, information about the committee structure, and just really high level. And then there's also more detail on the strategic plan and how it's laid out into our budget. The other thing we're working on, which will be coming, and I actually left it back there, is the budget and brief. So that will be forthcoming, hopefully either at the next board meeting or at the committee. So it'll just depend on how fast we can get it to the printer. So lots of budget will be finalized this month. And for those who don't know, the budget and brief is just a little small trifold pamphlet that you can have and you can take to your constituents or just have in your pocket. It just gives some statistical data, the property tax overall for like the median house hold what an average bill would be, and then what capital projects we're going to work on. And I think I already said this with statistical data. So it's just a really good, really high view point. Lastly, we have our external auditors coming in a couple weeks. So once budget ends, we go full force into audit. And just one more thing to add, as we go into a new fiscal year, we're going to be working to better improve our financial report. So if there's anything you guys want to see, please feel free to reach out to Heather or I. We already have a few ideas of how we can add additional value to the report for what you guys hope to see. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Eden?
Remind me, the interest earned on ARPA funds, can we spend that however we want, or does it follow the ARPA guidelines? Maybe that's a Scott question.
I'm sorry, Ms. Blair, would you re-ask your question? I was making notes.
That's a great way of saying that you weren't listening, by the way. My students do that too. Yeah. The interest that we've earned on the ARPA funds that we haven't spent,
Yes.
can we spend that however we want, or does it go back into the ARPA fund and follow the guidelines
Great
for
question.
ARPA?
Interest income earned on investments from ARPA dollars before they are spent are free and clear. You can use those however you see fit. In fact, either Julie or Heather can confirm, but I believe that earned interest income we're actually not keeping in the ARPA fund so that we can keep the ARPA dollars separate and apart from those earned income dollars.
Yes, all the interest earned on ARPA is captured so we can track specifically how much interest is earned on that chunk of money we still have. No, it's in the ARPA fund. Yeah. So the ARPA money is in its own bank account, and so that money is completely separate. So, if the board ever takes action to move it elsewhere, it's very clearly delineated how much money is earned on ARPA.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving on to Headington Oaks Financial Report.
I'm shorter. Hopefully you can hear me. This is not moving. There we go. Hello, everyone. I have the September balance sheet and receivables for Headington in this month's report. We just an update. I did reach out to our consultant on the Medicaid piece to see if there were any additional updates, but in December, we received our first round of payment on 17 of the claims that were resubmitted to HFS, and that was just under $42,000 that we received. There are, I don't know the exact number, but there are quite a few more that they are rebilling, and it's in that process. But because of the holiday, we haven't had much contact back from HFS on that. So we're hopeful to see that coming through. We are still waiting on Molina's counteroffer back to our counteroffer. And hopefully we'll have some movement on there as well. So,
Any questions for Heather? Oh, thank you. Moving on. November 2023 Accounts Payable Review. And let me just say, you can go into the weeds in these, because Rob and I were talking about that, and we have.
yes, there are a lot of weeds to dig into. We try to be as transparent and open as possible. So there's a lot to look at, and in hopefully near the end of this month, we'll have our open finance portal ready to go. That'll be on demand at any time. Any one of you or any member of the public can click on whatever department they wish and kind of drill down and see where the expenses are going. So we're just getting the final pieces of that with the software provider in place. But if you have any questions on these specific ones, then I'm happy to answer.
Any specific questions? Jimmy?
Just curious for when you look at that and every month. I've always wondered this, but never. So all the Amazon purchases, like how is that regulated where, and some of the stuff that's being purchased on there, wouldn't there be a government portal where we would have already negotiated rates, or does Amazon have a government rate purchasing?
So we do have a business agreement with Amazon. Purchases run through the purchasing office also. So Jim Smith, the purchasing manager, reviews those. And the arrangement we have with Amazon is it's preferred providers are smaller businesses, minority-owned businesses, diverse businesses within their vendor supply. So we're actually trying to get that data captured to put on our, I know this is additional information, but since we're on the topic of Amazon, so that we can add that to the report for the HB 453 requirement on diverse spend of the county, because Amazon is a substantial spend, and that is something that we're going to continue to look at. But the rates are competitive for what between the other vendors that we have, like Warehouse Direct that we use and Quill.
Any other questions? Yeah, Rob.
My question is, some of the categories are kind of ambiguous. Is there a place where departments can put a note in, even just like a one word? I know there was one that I asked about for the ARPA spend, and if the highway department would have put for backhoe or just something easy, transparent to see,
Right.
when you look at the report.
So on the very tiny print pages, there are, in the invoice description column, there are places that departments can put very specific information in. Sometimes we will update that information to be a little clearer rather than having somebody put like 2A625, which I have no idea what that means. We'll look at the invoice and update it to say, Chevy Tahoe, whatever it is. But we don't catch all of them. Because we have such a decentralized system across the county, it's hard for people to be consistent with them. But that's one of our initiatives in fiscal 24's reporting, to have people kind of have a template for people to use so that they make more sense and be more descriptive.
And was that by vendor? Is that the lines where it has?
It is, yes, by vendor.
Okay.
Which is also a little tricky if you don't want to look through 10 pages of them for the vendor or that particular, if you don't know who it was purchased from.
Right. I typically start with the by department and look at it, and then if something stands out, then I usually have to go dig in the vendor area and try to find it to get.
This open finance portal will be more helpful with that too, because then you can click on it and it pulls all the information that you would need.
Okay.
So this will just be an add-on, a printout.
Okay. No, I appreciate all the information that you guys provide.
Sure.
Additional questions? Okay, thank you. Moving on. We are at our one resolution, which is FY 2024 legislative initiatives. Can I get a motion on the floor, please? Phil, and second, Brandy. Okay. Scott, you taking this one?
All right. Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. So just also make a reminder for the committee members, the legislative breakfast is scheduled for 7:30 a.m. Friday, January 12th, and it's at the main branch of the public library just down the street from the courthouse here. As most of you recall, That legislative breakfast is a joint presentation of our legislative agenda, the Board of Health's legislative agenda, and the City Council's legislative agenda. What's in the packet today is our portion of that. Following past practice, we solicited feedback for initiatives from the organization. We did not get many, but we did take what we've got, received. We look at what some of the state associations are planning to do. As I sit on a legislative committee for one of those state associations. Madam Chair sits on a legislative committee for a different state association, and there's a couple others that we do track. So we look at those. We then, myself, the city manager, and the public health administrator, then sit down, pull everything together, and create the program that we're recommending. And again, what's before you today is our share of that. Before I kind of highlight what's in that program, I wanted to share that we had a couple of successes in the 23 list of priorities. Two of those were really statewide issues, and one was a very local issue. The two statewide issues was that the 911 surcharge was renewed, so we won't have to talk about that for at least another year, maybe two. And then we did see increase in funding for the Township Bridge program. The local initiative that was funded by the General Assembly was funding for the co-response law enforcement model. That's the city's police department is the lead for that, but the health department has been playing a role in that, and I believe the sheriff has been playing a role in that as well. So three successes coming out of things that we specifically asked for, in addition to the defense that is what we spend most of our time and effort doing during the legislative session from the spring. In terms of what we have recommended for you today, there are modifications to three of the direct sponsorship requests that were in last year's program that we're asking or recommending to be included again, but with some slight modification. So the first one of those is economic development incentives. This initiative has actually been a pretty routine or recurring item for a number of years. It, in general, it talks about some of the limited tools in our toolbox and the state's toolbox to support economic development, especially when you look at it compared to other states that have more established programs. One thing that we want to add to the ask this year is financial assistance to local governments for the purpose of gaining site control for a mega site. And for those of you that aren't familiar with a mega site is several hundred or sometimes even 1,000 or more acres of land that is for a large economic development project. The best example of the one here in the last 6 months or so, 9 months, is the electric vehicle battery plant that is going to be located in Kankakee County. We actually have in Peoria County 2 geographic areas that could be mega sites, and it's important because the EDC, I would say on average a couple of times a week, will receive a request for information through Intersect Illinois, which is the state's economic development arm, and other site selectors for mega sites. And those normally come in the form of this is project whatever, and then it lists a whole bunch of requirements: acreage, utility access, access to a certain number of jobs, because they might be either manufacturing jobs or whatever the case may be. And many times we actually have geographic areas in the county that check most of all the boxes, except that we don't have site control. And that could be the EDC, that could be us, that could be the city, or any other unit of government. And when you're talking about several hundred acres, it's cost prohibitive for local government to be able to go out and either flat out acquire, if that's something we would want to do, or to at least get options and site control so that we could submit that geographic area for consideration. And then if it actually gets selected, then we actually go through the process of trying to secure title to the property. That's something historically, for example, although not on the mega site scale, the city of Pekin has had an advantage on everybody on this side of the river. They have a business park that has had large lots that are for industrial purposes, and they've been able to in over time attract businesses that could have come here if there would have been land available, simply because the city, when they developed that business park, they owned the land, and if they had to make the deal work, they were willing to give that lot away for $1 to whatever business they were trying to attract to their business park. We don't have that anywhere on this side of the river, and so as we look at both at Medina Plains, which is the area west of Allen Road but inside of Route 6. And then what the other area is Pekin Bottoms, which is well north of 1,000 acres on both sides of Route 9 between US 24 and the Illinois River as you're heading into Pekin, if that's the way you go to Pekin. Those two large land masses have the potential to be developable for large-scale industrial or commercial development, but for the fact we don't have site control, and depending on what the unique utility needs would be, maybe some additional utility needs. But in general, they're very attractive pieces of property that we are not able to market for these large-scale mega projects. So the ask is to have the state provide some financial assistance to local governments so that we can at least go through that process. And then should this board or any other board or body want to do that, then we've got the flexibility. So adding the flexibility to that. So adding a tool in our toolbox. The second direct sponsorship request, that item that we're modifying is related to expanding code enforcement. This is one also that we've been asking for a number of sessions. Here we're asking for legislation that would permissively expand our code enforcement powers. The modification this year is we've been maybe it's been a little bit too vague in the past, but we specifically call out ticketing authority. So we're adding language that would, to our request, that should it be granted to us, would give the Planning and Zoning Department ticketing authority for various code enforcement issues. And this is most prevalent, I think, in both Ms. Williams' district and to a degree Ms. Gross Allison's district, in that you look at certain portions of Limestone Township and where we have a significant number of code enforcement issues, and the code enforcement issue doesn't know, or the property owner or the tenant doesn't, well, they might know, but the issues are more easily resolved if they're, say, on the east side of Laramie than the west side of Laramie, because the city of Peoria has much more authority and control to resolve those issues than we do on the west side of Laramie. And so, again, trying to give you the authority or another tool in the toolbox should you choose to use it, to be able to address those code enforcement issues that we see in certain portions of the county. The third direct sponsorship request that we're asking for modification on deals with modernizing digital records. We've talked before about the Local Records Act not keeping pace with advances in document management, with the exception of the courts, which has now gone completely digital. Most everything else in our organization is still having to work in two worlds, a paper world and an electronic world. We work in both because we're hopeful that over the course of time, we'll be able to move exclusively to the electronic world, but also we continue to comply with the Act, and when records are eligible for destruction under the Act, we petition the state to have to get the authorization to destroy those records, and we do in as timely a fashion as we can. But one thing that we've started to see from some state agencies, and I'll use IDOT as an example. Some state agencies now are using e-signatures as a means of approving grant agreements or contracts. IDOT, though, is one agency that actually is using both. So it depends on what division of IDOT you're dealing with. If it's more on the planning grant side, most likely we're going to be using an e-signature, something like DocuSign. If it's actual, agreement for money, most likely federal money being passed through the state, or, then it still requires a wet signature. So, the ask there is to let's continue the modernization, and let's expand the modernization to include provisions that would allow for e-signatures on documents. Finally, under direct sponsorship requests, we have 3 new requests this year. All 3 of them do have a linkage back to state associations. The first 2 are from the Illinois State Association of Counties, and the third one was initiated by the Illinois Municipal League, but we feel that there's some value to us in it. And so that first one from the Illinois State Association of Counties, and I know this is one that we've talked about before, and in prior years, prior boards have chosen to exclude this, but this is going to be a push by the Illinois State Association of Counties this spring session, so we wanted to bring it forward. And again, it's permissive language, so nothing's being mandated, but we're asking for permissive language that would give this body the ability to have and adopt a local option motor fuel tax. I think it's pretty well documented that we have, in excess of $100 million of county highway road projects that are in need, and if you talk to Mr. Salzer and the budget that his committee oversees, the motor fuel tax allotment that we receive and the property taxes that we receive in the county highway fund and the matching tax fund don't even come remotely close to really scratching the surface for that need. And we're not even, that's just on the road side. We aren't even talking about the bridge side. Currently, the Colorado counties have the local option motor fuel tax, but nobody else does. And so the legislation that the state association wants to propose, and we would recommend being a part of that, is that any county in the state, any non-home rule county, so it would be everybody except Cook County, would be able to enact by ordinance a local option motor fuel tax, should that local body choose to do so. Second new request is the website posting of property assessments. This is also a request from the Illinois State Association of Counties. They did an independent review of the various requirements that we have to, that county governments or local governments have to disclose in terms of transparency purposes. And what that independent study found was that there were over 500 statutory requirements that require us to disclose over 700 separate pieces of information. Half of those, or more than half of those actually, involve some type of mandate to publish in a local newspaper. For us, as a county government, that includes assessment notices. Once every 4 years, the Supervisor Assessments Office does a quadrennial reassessment, so that means we reassess every single taxable property in the county. That means that, and we see it in the supervisor's budget when heading into that cycle, where we spend in excess of $80,000 a year in publication costs for those assessments. In the 3 off years where we're not doing the reassessment, we still have to publish assessment notices for all taxable property that had a change from the prior year. And that in and of itself can range from $10,000 to $15,000 annually. What this piece of this initiative is looking to do is to make it permissive, or to give you, the county board, a choice as to whether or not you would want to continue doing that or publish it on our website. So, and again, would we be able to then redirect those dollars to some other service that we're providing? Absolutely, and that would be a policy decision for you to do that. The third and final new request was actually generated by the Illinois Municipal League. Senator Holmes filed a bill, Senate Bill 47, last spring, but it hasn't gone anywhere at this point, and it deals with immunity from liability for cyber attacks for local governments. And here, what we're looking for is to ensure that should that bill move, let's make sure that it's not providing that liability or that immunity from liability exclusively to municipal governments. We want to make sure county governments have that same protections that municipal governments might be asking for, or are asking for in that piece of legislation. In terms of funding requests, both capital and for vertical or general funding requests, those really remain unchanged. And those are found in the agenda briefing. I think the key point in terms of economic drivers for the community at large is, the city has multiple multi-million-dollar rebuild Illinois projects that have been authorized but not have been appropriated, and locally across all units of government, all not-for-profits and other entities, there's over 50 projects and $106 million that has been authorized but hasn't been appropriated yet. And I think it's critically important that those projects do get appropriated. Lastly, the last section of the agenda is the request for position support. Those remain changed as well. These are, most of the time where the defense gets played during the session, such things as, protecting our state shared revenues, trying to reduce our sales tax administrative fee obligations, automatic appropriation authority for certain things like motor fuel tax and video casino gaming tax, 911 revenues. If you recall, in the prior administration, when we went a period of time with no state budget, that meant that the state was collecting motor fuel tax revenues from every time we went to the pump and bought gas, but those were not being distributed to local governments like Peoria County. We want automatic appropriation authority for things like that. Additionally, just under position support, it's looking at some trailer bill language to refine Public Act 102-954, which deals with design build projects, and then making sure we've got the support to continue to fully fund the court system, which is critical for us in terms of salary reimbursements for juvenile probation and juvenile detention and adult probation services, because many of our probation officers and many of our youth development specialists and other positions at the JDC are reimbursed through the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts, and we can obviously only get full reimbursement if the appropriation is there for the court system. One thing, Madam Chair, before I turn it back over to you to answer any questions is, when we do the slide deck at the breakfast meeting, the request for position support is going to be not in the slide deck per se, but more in the takeaway that we're going to give each of our state legislators. It's going to be in the form of what NACO does at the national level, what Illinois State Association of Counties does at the state level, to a degree what Illinois Municipal League does for municipal governments, and that is an issues platform that is divided into categories that pretty closely follow the major subject matter areas. So we're still going to, obviously, we'll touch on those, but we're not going to spend as much time as we historically do. We're going to make sure that that's more in the takeaway for the legislators.
All right, any questions? No questions? Okay, then we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Are there any nays? Okay, that's unanimous, thank you. Okay, we're at public comment. Is there any public comment? Miscellaneous? Okay, we're adjourned.